And sometimes you get happy accidents where it might not have been what you were planning for, but what you ended up with was beautiful in its own right.
A delightful
so you have to be willing to exactly.
You're listening to Peachtree Corners Life, a podcast sharing ideas, opinions, and news about the city of Peachtree Corners, the community we live in, and the people that are your neighbors. Now, your host, Rico Figliolini.
Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Life, the podcast that covers everything about Peachtree Corners here in the great state of Georgia. Today, we have a special guest because it's Artist Month, right? Wesleyan Artist Market will be held the end of this month. And so we have one of the featured artists here today to talk to us about her art and about Wesleyan Artist Market. But before we get to that, I wanted to thank one of our supporters, EV Remodeling. Content is supported here by community-minded companies and organizations like EV Remodeling that help us produce editorially independent content. They're companies that underwrite us in additional ways beyond print advertising. And Eli from EV Remodeling has come on board as a great sponsor of ours, not only for the magazine, our new launch of a new magazine coming out in May called Southwest Gwinnett Magazine, but as well as these family of podcasts. So I want to thank them for their support. To find out a little bit more about their work and the philosophy of design your space to design your life, check out Eli's website at evremodelinginc.com. So thank you, Eli. Appreciate your support. I want to bring on our artist. Hey, Elizabeth, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you this morning?
Good. You're one of three artists that we're profiling in the latest issue of Peachtree Corners magazine. That should be hitting the mailboxes this weekend.
I got mine yesterday.
Did you really? Good.
I
the
did.
Post office is working overtime then. That's
Yes.
good. That's great. So, and that was written by Patricia Winsper, who's done some great work, and she's done, I guess, the articles of profiles of artists for the last 3 years running for us. And I do appreciate you being on our podcast. I think there were two students that we had from Wesleyan Artist Market just a few weeks ago on our podcast to talk about their work. So it's good to have, not only are you an artist, but you work for Wesleyan School as well, right?
I do. I'm the elementary art teacher. And so some of the students that are now participating as artists were some of my students when they were much younger. And it's so amazing to be able to watch their talents grow and to see their inspiration and to see kind of just the direction that they take. And some of them may choose to continue on with design and with art, but they're all just so incredibly talented that's one of the cool things about this art show. Is that you do get to see some emerging artists, as I will, and the community gets to celebrate the arts here in the springtime and see such a variety.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I mean, some people think art is just paintings, drawings, and maybe pottery, but there's a whole world out there of stuff. I mean, one of the kids does seamstress work and creates through fabric, creates her art.
Yes. And you think about our world nowadays with social media, there is so much visual communication. Yeah. And we are all drawn to things that are attractive or have something that connect with us. Well, that's an artist who designed it.
Yeah. From their perspective and what they see, the experience of creating the art. You know, I think one of the things Patricia quoted you about is that art, if you want perfect, you buy the manufactured pieces. There are 1,000 molds, just
exactly.
Big pieces, right?
Exactly.
Because it was interesting to read that article about the way you work and the way pottery, the way glass, the way artwork, when you're firing up artwork even. How, number one, it could be explosive in so many different ways, right?
Yes, exactly.
and
very unpredictable.
Yes, unpredictable. Where you might start out with what you think is a blue, and chemistry and fire will show you that, no, it's a red.
Yes. And within the pottery world, specifically what I was talking about there was talking about raku, which raku is very environmental. That's where it's more unpredictable. In an electric or a gas kiln, which is the firing process, it is more predictable. And the chemicals that go into the glazes, the range that you could get. So speaking of this particular range in the raku firing, I know if I don't put it in reduction, which is putting in one of those containers where there are combustible materials and you put a lid on it. And so the fire uses up the oxygen, sucks out certain particles, certain minerals in the glazes. You kind of know the range that you're going to get, but it is still unpredictable, and where that range is going to hit. Like, where's there a hot spot in the fire? And
Right.
that sort of thing. And so whether your item is in the top of the kiln or on the bottom of the kiln, how
Okay.
fast it cools, how fast you put it in reduction if you're doing raku, all of that impacts the coloration and where it's going to be. So you can know a range is basically what you're going to get, but it's unpredictable.
Amazing. It's so when people see movies where people are making pottery and stuff, and
Yes,
then they have to they have to kiln it. They have to like bake it, if you will. Yeah.
exactly. And so one of the things, that movie, everybody thinks of, gosh, there was that one movie with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
it really is very kind of sensual and informing it, and very meditative, very
Yes.
cathartic. And so that part was so true. Ghost, that was the movie. That part
Ghost, right.
is so true. And it just, the feeling of it, you just really can get lost in what you're doing.
You do your work at, I think, if I understand correctly, at Sproul Art Center?
I do, mostly because in my classroom here at school, I don't have a wheel. It takes more strength. And so that's going to be in the upper levels. And so I do hand building with my students. And that's where they make pancakes and turn it into something. They form what's called a pinch pot, which is centuries old process of starting with a ball and then forming it with your thumbs and your hands to form a pot. Then you can do coils. That's the way we work here. And that's learning the fundamentals of clay. And that's what I started with when I was learning clay as well, was learning the fundamentals of hand building. And then I went into the wheel or throwing pottery. And that takes a lot of strength. And the key to that is really being able to center your clay. So trying to get it completely in the middle and get it smooth. And that takes a lot of practice and skill and strength.
I would imagine if you didn't have a good day, going to do that may not turn out well, or could turn out well, I guess.
Exactly. Some days you get to the wheel and you're just like, wow, things are just not quite working today. And then other days you do something and you're forming it in 15 minutes, you get a beautiful pot and you're like, wow, I've got the feel today. So
I think anyone with a passion, whether it's sports or it's art, when they're at that plate or they're on that field or they're at that seat creating something, if it's not your day, it's not your day, right? To be able to create what you need.
Yeah, we really do. We have days where somehow it's all clicking, you're focused, you're in a feel, and you keep going. And then other days you decide it's time to clean your bucket and go something else.
You've had experience in different artwork through the years. I understand that you moved here to Peachtree Corners maybe about 28 years ago.
Yes, I did. I've been in Atlanta since 87. And so, but I was in the Dunwoody area as opposed to up here in Peachtree Corners. And I did many different art forms through the years. One thing, I did a lot of heirloom sewing, hand embroidery, hand dyeing antique laces and things like that. And I've done some painting.
Okay. So, but you're settling on the work you're doing now. And what is it? I would say pottery, but how would you describe it? Like the work?
Yeah, pottery. I love finding beauty in functional items. I'm not as much a sculptor so I'm not looking for abstract, even though some of the raku pieces are more decorative than they are functional due to their surface nature. But I just love having beautiful functional things around. And that's kind of what got me started, is wanting to be able to make those things that I could envision in my head. Little bowls on the counter that you want to put your recycling in or something, just that simple kind of stuff. But I wanted something really pretty, and I wanted it sort of organic. I didn't want it commercial. I wanted to kind of come up with the vision, the size, the color, the texture, all of that I wanted on my own.
So is it fair to say you get your inspiration from everyday life, or is there?
I do. I really get most of my inspiration probably from nature. I'm very much an outdoor kind of person and just love the beautiful colors that we find in nature. Birds, the ocean is a big inspiration. And that's one of the things that I'm constantly trying to replicate in my glazes, is kind of just coming up with those colors of the ocean and the blended colors. So not really a solid, but blended, and textures from nature, like bark. Yeah.
So that must be difficult, because talking about the color before and how chemistry is a big part of this, and fire and heat and being able to stop the reaction, does it get easier with experience, or is it still hit or miss to where you
It
feel
gets easier with experience, but there is some hit or miss to it. You've just got to know that there's a certain amount of unexpected, and there's always the risk. There's always the risk that a piece is going to crack and that you're not going to get the color that you want to. But then with experience, you realize it's just clay. I can make it again and I can try again. And sometimes you get happy accidents where it might not have been what you were planning for, but what you ended up with was beautiful in its own right.
A
And so you
delightful
have to be
surprise.
willing to exactly. It's just like life in that sense, and that you've got these plans, but it doesn't always work out that way. But if you're open to what you get, often it's so much more beautiful.
So do you find yourself sometimes driving or doing things and then all of a sudden think to yourself, darn, next time I think I'm going to try to put horsehair on the layering of the pot to see if that burns off and becomes, do you think like that? Is that something you do? Like in
Yes,
the middle of,
yes, but I certainly cannot claim to have inspired and created that process of the horsehair. That goes back hundreds of years, I believe, in Japan. So no, I don't claim that, but I would love to
no,
say, you know what? I'd love to do this and see what would happen if I do this.
right,
And
right.
maybe if I put just a little, or if I put a lot, or if I do this kind of a shape, how is it
Mhm.
going to change?
Now you have young kids you're teaching and they're
And
going
teach.
through the process, right?
Yeah, my children, my students are young kids. My children are in their late 20s. So clear.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Your students at Wesleyan. And I grant that they're doing the basic work, but do you find that some of the students that come back to you have done more, have done other things?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Where they get to go on and they learn more and they experiment more and they develop more skills and develop their confidence to
Hmm.
be able to go in the direction that they envision. It takes a lot of confidence for children to risk failure to be able to
Right.
create art, because you've got to fail a lot of times, as we all know. And so to be able to see them when they get up potentially to their AP art and they do it
Mm.
in AP 3D art. I mean, there was just a special student a couple of years ago, and he's at Kennesaw, and he was just making some glorious things and just getting so intuitive with his forms, and then how he was altering those forms to represent an idea that he had was just so heartwarming, and that is just exciting to see.
So as a teacher, do you find some of them coming back or sharing things with you
Oh,
that,
absolutely. I follow
oh,
some on Instagram and to
okay.
see what they're doing. I've got a little student now that was always enamored with birds,
Uh-huh.
and she's going to be a participating artist in the show. And she has got some beautiful pieces showing birds. And now she's doing them not in a traditional sense, but she's got her own view on how she's presenting them. And that's what an
Mhm.
artist does, is sees things differently and helps other people see things in a different way through their art.
Right. So, and the kids that you teach now, how old are they? What age
Kindergarten
range?
through fourth grade.
That's definitely a certain perspective, different from high schoolers or middle schoolers, I'm sure.
Yeah, in some of the ways they're more free. They have no problem painting horses blue and doing all sorts of
Right.
things. But then as they do get a little bit more fourth grade, that's when the inhibitions and the insecurities
Mm,
of comparison to fellow students comes in.
right.
So that's when they start to withdraw a little bit. But my goal as the teacher is hopefully to give them skills and
Hmm.
confidence and courage to be able to work through that, to be able
Hmm.
to get past that fear of failure and realize it's just paper, it's just ink, it's just pottery and clay. And that's
And
how, I'm going to learn.
you know what? I think also as they get older, I mean, it's been speaking to my daughter lately. She's a psych master. So we sit down, we talk for an hour sometimes about stuff. And we talk about how when you're younger, you see things much differently than an older person because an older person has so many years of experience and also years of a perspective, right? Which is a lot different than younger people. Younger people see things very differently, I think, because they're on that other end of life, right?
Yeah.
And so so I have a young son that also writes, and sometimes they don't want to share this stuff because, it's just like, well, what are you going to think about it? What are you going to think about me reading this,
Yeah, you're opening
or,
yourself up to
right?
being vulnerable to people, and that
Yeah,
opens yourself up for judgment. It opens
right,
yourself up for failure, and it brings out the insecurities that we all
right.
inherently have.
Yeah, because art is personal, right? I mean, you do
Absolutely.
something, and I'm sure you pour your heart into something, and then you want to show it. And then as an artist, you might be listening stepping back and listening to different people looking at it, and maybe they're not knowing you're around, and they will have different perspectives. And I'm sure, have you heard anything that you could share that would be one of those surprising moments where someone said something about your artwork?
My goodness. Well, I will say this. My students are just some of my best cheerleaders. When they
Okay.
come to the artist market and they see
Hmm.
my work, they're just like, "Oh, Miss Abels, you're just so good." And that's just so heartwarming because in my mind, when I look at some of the pieces, I might see the imperfections that I wish weren't there.
Mm.
And so they're wonderful. So if you ever are having a bad day, just pull the young students out and they're going to remind you that you're kind of a rock star in a way. They're also going to tell you the truth sometimes that you don't necessarily want to hear, but
Yes.
they're wonderful. And that's just one of the blessings of what I do. I can't think of a time when I was like eavesdropping or rather able to hear that.
That's fine.
But
Sometimes that happens. When you were young and you went to school, what did you study in college, for example? Was it art? I mean, what did
No,
you
it was
study?
not art. It was actually communication and sociology. So I was planning on going into broadcasting. So I
Oh,
worked
wow.
on a television show and the news program some, and then I just ended up, I guess I chickened out. And I wasn't willing to go off and move to a really small market, really small
Mm.
town, and kind of be on my own quite at that point. So, life has a way of bringing things differently. And so through my children, I ended up getting my teaching degree. And that's what brought me kind of back full circle. And that's why I said,
Mhm.
even in an article, that I think of myself more as a creator
Mhm.
because I'm not a formally trained artist,
Okay.
which many of the greatest artists around and throughout history were not formally taught.
That's
So
right.
there's a lot to be said for the experience of trial and error. I've
I
had
guess
some great teachers and inspirational people along the way.
I guess if we talk about like centuries ago, like the Renaissance, I mean, there were workshops. People became apprentices to famous artists, and they would learn that way.
Exactly.
I mean, different now. You go to school, they teach you, you go through these classes and levels, and they teach you different materials, different mediums that you use.
So
I
they
don't
can
know.
teach you, your education can teach you the technical aspect and
Right.
it can teach you, I guess, skills and things like that, but it doesn't
Hmm.
teach the heart and the passion
That's
for
right.
what it takes
Yeah.
to really be able to communicate through your art
Yeah.
something that's unique to you,
Yeah.
you know?
Film school is like that. I think you could go and you learn the technical aspects of how to shoot something, then you at least can know what rules to break, right? And
Yes.
and if you have that passion and you have a great reel, then you're going to be able to make it somewhere maybe.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's luck too, right? It's the where you put yourself out and how much you put yourself out, to get that praise or that judgmental, I mean, people are going to judge your art one way or
Yeah.
another.
It does help to have a little bit of success early on, a little bit of that, because
Yeah.
it just emboldens you to keep going in that direction and to keep trying. And if the door is slammed a few too many times, you really have to dig deep to find that resilience to keep going.
That's right. That's right. I'm sure. So, how long have you been doing the Wesleyan Artist Market itself,
Well, as a participating
participating?
artist, I think about 6 years. Actually, when I came to Wesleyan School,
Uh,
24 years ago, I guess, when my son first started at Wesleyan School, I was familiar with an art show in another city. And I brought kind of my vision of trying to create an art show for Wesleyan. So I actually started the art show. So for the first 5 years, I
oh,
was the chair of the art
okay.
show.
Okay.
And then I took a hiatus and then I came back as working here. And then I became a participating artist. So I
Huh.
went from being a customer, the founder, customer
Oh, that's
still,
awesome.
right? And now I'm a
Right.
participant artist.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
That's good to know. So, but now, do you do any exhibition work or showings outside the artist market,
I
outside of work?
don't. And the main reason why is I am not a high production potter because this
Okay.
is not my full time job. And so
Right.
I just don't have enough time to create the inventory that I need to go
Mhm.
do some of the other area art shows.
Gotcha.
So I find Wesleyan and the Wesleyan art community, they get my first shot, they get my attention.
Do you have an Instagram account or use Etsy for your stuff?
You know what? I am developing my Facebook account. So I'm going to have
Okay.
Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, okay.
And then
Cool.
eventually I
Cool.
will get to Etsy. It's been on the to-do list, but
Yeah.
again, keeping up with the production of it is
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
challenging part.
Yeah, for sure. Etsy and social media has made it great for artists to be able to share their artwork, be able to find followers that are interested in the pieces that the artists produce. So it's a great time for young artists, I think.
Yes, it is really, especially during this pandemic, it's been able to keep
Oh,
the arts
yeah,
going and
yeah,
keep people connected.
for sure. And technology is just making it easier to be able to even be able to see things in a three-dimensional way versus just a flat piece of art, like image on the screen. It's becoming less expensive to create your artwork in a way that people can flip it and look at it at their leisure versus, let's say, video. So just a lot of good technology out there making it better for artists to be able to share their work. So it's kind of cool that way. Okay, because you do what you do when you go shopping and you're going out at other, we're not talking about flea markets or art festivals and stuff, but just normal shopping. Do you see stuff that inspire you? Do you see things there that says to you, why is this even being sold?
Sometimes I see the things that are, why is this thing even being sold? Yes. But again, I do definitely see some things. I love Italian pottery. And I
Okay.
love that earthiness and that look of that. And I see things and I keep thinking, I want to be able to achieve that color in my pieces sometimes because I'm so drawn to color. And there are certain colors that are really difficult to get in the glazes. And so I keep looking for the perfect color and keep looking as I create my art and try and develop more and more patience with
Yes.
trying to take the time to create and to fine tune, particularly the glazing process.
Yeah.
So I
Do
do.
you, do you do sample glazes? That was just hitting me as you were saying that, and we talked about chemistry before. When you're creating the chemistry for these glazes, if you will, do you test fire some samples?
Yes, you really should, mainly because to get the layering and to see how they're going to react with each other.
Yeah.
And so that is important. So you make little tiles that you are able
Okay.
to do that, knowing that it's going to be a little bit different, but you try and create these little ridged tiles that are going to give you the vertical effect so
Right.
you know if it's going to run or is it going to break and things like that.
All right, cool. I just want to ask you some other questions to tie things up a little bit that I normally ask my interviewees. I did this with the students. Just some quick questions like, what's your favorite or most inspirational place in Pastry Corners or in
In
general?
in Peachtree Corners, my favorite inspirational place, I would kind of say my backyard. I've got beautiful
Okay.
trees and I've got like, beautiful azaleas and the birds. I do love taking walks, and we're blessed here to have so many parks, which is
Yeah.
wonderful. But in my neighborhood, we have a park down along the river, and that's just
Oh,
always
nice.
so inspiring. I can almost feel the people that walked on those grounds 200 years ago along the river.
Hmm.
And yeah,
For sure. What is your favorite book or
my
movie?
favorite, gosh, I will say modern
Or
day book would probably Where the Crawdads Sing was a good one.
okay.
Redeeming Love is a pretty amazing one. And then kind of more of a classic, To Kill a Mockingbird. To go back
Ah,
and read that as an adult.
yes. Yes.
And there's also the audio version, which Sissy Spacek narrated,
Oh,
which
okay.
really brings
Yeah.
a flavor to it, which is pretty cool. So I like that one.
Yeah, the kids have read that. Obviously, it's a classic book for reading in English class and
Yes.
seen the movie.
But to come back and read it years later and to really
Yes.
get the nuance, that's pretty.
Yeah, yeah. Especially the original version versus I think there's several versions of it, but as far as edited versions, removing
Yeah.
words and stuff, the
Yeah.
original version really does make a difference to read it in that language.
It does.
Um,
And to think about it in the light of what's happening current day.
yeah,
It's
for
just
sure. What wouldn't you do without?
I would not do without, of course, family doesn't count, but family and my
Right, right.
animals,
Okay,
right? My animals. I wouldn't do without creating of some sort.
okay. I think you said before you're a cat person
And dogs. I'm just an
and
animal
dogs.
person.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah, I'd have a menagerie if I could.
What's your favorite food?
My favorite food, gosh, I don't guess French fries is a good option. Um,
Yes.
no, not allowed to say that. Uh, I
Extra
would say,
fries, please. Yes.
yeah, really. I vegetables.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I love vegetables.
All right. And last question is, if you had a superpower, what would that be?
Gosh, I thought about that one other time, and now I'm on the spot, trying to figure it out.
It's hard. You have Superman, you have Spider-Man, you have all the
And I'm thinking, see, the
traditional
first thing that came to my
heroes.
mind was to be able to create, to bring peace,
Ah,
but that's not the same
okay.
kind of superpower that we're thinking. I wouldn't want to read minds. I know that part. I would not want to read minds. So it'd be maybe to stretch and morph into any shape you want.
There you go. That's very artistic, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah.
All right. We've been talking to Elizabeth Abels, teacher and student in a way of life and artist that's going to be at the Wesleyan Artist Market. So tell us how we can, find out more about the Artist Market. Where can we find you there if we come visit and all that? Or how can people follow you if that's the case?
So for following me, I am on Facebook Marketplace, and then I am on Instagram, I think Elizabeth Abels.
Cool.
Now the Wesleyan Artist Market is on the campus, the beautiful campus here in Peachtree Corners, and it's going to be open on Friday, April 29th from 10 to 7, and then on Saturday from 10 to 3, I believe. And there'll be about 70 plus professional artists as well as student artists. There'll be food trucks. It'll be a wonderful celebration of the arts. And there's a variety of art styles, mediums, price ranges, you name it. And the artists have got to be present. And it's not reproductions. It's got to be original art. And so it's a wonderful opportunity to meet the artist, to learn more about their process and what their inspiration was, and to really be able to connect in a personal way with what you want to bring into your home. And I think that's what makes this show special, because you can go to a gallery, but this way you get to see the artist and speak to them. Bringing art into your home is a personal thing. It's going to be a part of your life for a long time. Yeah. And so to know the reason why the artist created it helps you to connect, and it becomes part of your family. It's just part of your visual family.
Yeah, for sure. So, you need that background. You need that understanding of how that art came to be. It is Friday, April 29th from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. There's some special events that day also. Handcrafted coffees and gourmet baked goods for sale all day long. Even. So
yes.
Feel free, right? There's a pizza on the quad at 3 p.m.
It's free parking. It's in the big gymnasium. It's in the center of the campus. Mm-hmm. So you can get to it from many different directions. There'll be a lot of signs. There'll be a lot of people directing you there. And, it's just a great celebration. We're praying for good weather because that's always important.
So to find out, just Google Wesleyan Artist Market or go to livinginpeachtreecorners.com or search them on Instagram because you can follow them there as well. Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate you taking your time with us and sharing a little bit about what makes art for you.
Well, thank you very much for spotlighting the artist market and for including me and giving me the opportunity to kind of talk about why I do what I do and why I love what I'm doing and bringing art to Peachtree Corners.
This was fun. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Peachtree Corners Life with Rico Figliolini. You can listen to the show wherever podcasts are found, like iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Leave us a review too. It helps others find the show as well. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and YouTube channel for notifications of our live simulcast video streams of the show. Catch our other podcast shows at livinginpeachtreecorners.com. In fact, you can listen to our other popular show, The Capitalist Sage, a twice-a-month podcast about and for businesses. The show brings you interviews with business owners, leaders, and subject matter experts. Find what you need to meet today's challenges that every business owner faces. Check out the show at thecapitalistsage.com.